Welcome back to Burning the Ships Podcast Solo Show, the show where we go all in on business, health, family, and life without looking back. These solo episodes are designed to give you tactical strategies you can apply right away, followed by a mindset principle to help you anchor those strategies and execute with confidence. From time to time, I'll also bring in experts to dive deeper into specific areas so you're getting actionable tools and perspectives from all angles. This show is also brought to you by 608B Capital. At 608B, we provide short-term real estate loans for investors who need speed, certainty, and flexibility to scale their business. Whether it's a fix and flip or a buy and hold, our team understands the borrower side because we've been there and continue to be there ourselves. To learn more, visit 608bcapital.com. Now let's dive in. Welcome to Burning the Ships Podcast solo episode, and this week I'm going to kind of continue the series that I've been doing the last 4 or 5 weeks, but I'm going to get very specific on a strategy that is really the main and only strategy that Bill Phillips, my partner, and I used to build our portfolio early on, and that kind of was the stepping stones to get to where we're at now, where we're more focused on the lending. But that our real estate portfolio is and will continue to be the thing that gives us a lot of freedom and a lot of future wealth, and on paper, current wealth. We have a lot of equity in our portfolio, but I'll say it all the time, equity doesn't pay the light bill. So that wealth, if you want to call it that, on paper looks very good, but I want to talk through like our strategy to build that. And that strategy is the BRRRR strategy. I'm going to get into all the details. Y'all have heard me talk about this on the podcast. Before I start, I gotta share this. I was getting ready to record, and I had actually started recording this episode. And for those that don't know, I record all of these here. I've got a rental house that I rented out for years. And when I left my job back in end of 2022, I was planning on working from home. That did not work out very long. I needed a place to get up and go to every day. So what I did, I was having a lease expire at this particular house, and the renters that were renting it were moving to Florida. So I was already marketing to find new tenants for the house. But I stopped and I was like, you know what? It's in the town of Smithfield. It's where, it's 5-10 minutes away from my kid's school and where Katie works. It's a great place to drive to. It's the gym I go to every day is right next to this house. I'm going to convert that to my office. So this is now where I do my podcast. I come here every day and do my work. I do everything here. It's got 4 bedrooms. Eventually, once my brother starts here shortly, he'll have an office. Bill has some office space, and it's just kind of a place where we do meetings and stuff like that. None of that has anything to do with the BRRRR strategy. Where I'm going with that is I was starting to record, and I hear my front door open. And there's only a few people that would just barge in, like open the door. Obviously, my wife and kids, they're at school. Bill, he'll come on in. And outside of that, most people knock or ring the doorbell. But my mom is one that always, I can hear the door open, and it opens real slow because she never knows if I'm in a meeting or not. So I knew that she had just opened the door, and I had just started recording this podcast. And so I get up, I stop the recording. I know it's her, just how slow she opened the door. And there she was, kind of creeping in. And she had a gift for me. My birthday was a few days ago from when I'm recording this. And she I open up a box, and this is the gift. For those that are watching, you see it. For those that are listening, I'll read it out. It's a coffee mug, and it says grit at the top in big letters. And then under it says the drive, stamina, and fortitude to push through any challenge or obstacle until success is achieved. So that just sums my mom up in a nutshell. She She probably saw this online somewhere, ordered it, thinking it fit me, and it just made my day. And so now here I am re-recording this podcast in a little bit better mood than I was before because of this gift. So love my mom to death, as you all know, and that has kind of really reshaped my day. I love that mug, the thoughtfulness of that, and here I am back recording. So let me get into everything about this this strategy called the BRRRR strategy. Before I do that, almost forgot. Let me turn it over to my man JJ for JJ's joke of the week. Take it away, JJ.
Why can't you trust an atom? Because they make up everything.
All right, another good one from JJ. We're about out of the ones he had already recorded, so I think I got to get him back in here in the next week or two to record several more. And he told me the other day he's got a bunch ready, so I'll be excited to see where he goes with that. But the BRRRR strategy is so far in this the last several episodes, I've been very tactical on things like how to find a property, how to source deals and stuff like that. I've talked about how to underwrite deals. I've talked about how to fund deals, how to pay for them. And I've talked about how to manage projects once you buy them, how to manage the rehab, manage the contractors and stuff like that. All of that stuff I was kind of coming at it from the angle of flipping a property, right? So you buy it, you fix it up, you sell it, you make a profit. Well, there's another exit strategy that I do talk about a lot, and everything's the same. It's the exact same strategy, but instead of selling it on the back end, you're going to rent it out, and you're going to put a long-term debt on it. So that's going to be a loan, a traditional mortgage on it, and you'll refinance out either your own cash, or if you had a short-term lender, a private lender, something like that, that loan, that long-term debt is going to pay that money back, right? So it'll pay your lender back, or it'll pay your cash back if you're using your cash or line of credit, something like that. So that's called the BRRRR strategy. Now, this strategy has been around for years and years and years, long before it kind of had a phrase coined for it, the BRRRR strategy. That phrase came from, I believe it was coined by Brandon Turner and David Greene, who were the host of the BiggerPockets podcast, which is when I really dove into, everything real estate. That's kind of that was like the foundational podcast I listened to. And that's where I got the strategy from. And it became the strategy that, like, I had my mind made up. I was going to find one thing and really get good at it and really lean in on it. And then Bill and I eventually partnered soon after that, and we had the same mindset there. And this is the strategy we use. So what does it mean? All right, BRRRR. I'm going to break it down letter by letter. The B in BRRRR is buy. So you buy a property. I've already talked about how to source properties and how to fund them and all that. You can use many different ways, but the B is buy. Then you're going to renovate that property. So assuming you're buying it distressed and needs some work, you got to renovate it, rehab it, whatever. That's the R, first R. Once you renovate it, then you're going to rent it out. That's the second R. You're going to rent it, put a renter in there that's going to pay you money to live in that house, right? Now you're a landlord. The next R is, once you have it rented out, you're going to go to either a bank or a DSCR lender, debt service coverage ratio lender. And look that up if you're not familiar with it. I can cover that like in a future episode, going into details of those types of loans. So you refinance it. Both of those options are going to be long-term debt. So you're looking at a 20, 30, and even now they're offering like 40-year amortization on those types of loans. So you'll use that money for that loan to pay off your either hard money lender that you used up front, or a private lender, or pay yourself back cash. So if you use your own cash, you're paying that back. If you use a self-directed IRA, you're paying that money back. If you used a home equity line of credit, you're paying that money back. You're paying it with the proceeds from that refinance. So you've bought it, B. You have rehabbed it, R. You have rented it out, R. You now refinanced it, R. And the last R is repeat. So now, assuming you've done all those steps correctly, you should have that same pool of money to go and rinse and repeat. Do the same thing over and over and over. So that's exactly what Bill and I did. We did it first starting with our own cash. Then we evolved to using lines of credit. Then we had a private lender. Then we started using some hard money. And all these were just steps along the way as we continued scaling our deal flow. And so I'm going to back up a little bit, and I want to really key in before I get into like the details and nuances of this particular strategy. I want to go back to when I said I decided to key in on this as the strategy that was going to help me build my portfolio. So, when I heard about this and this strategy in real estate, it was very intuitive to me. It clicked right away. I understood it. It made perfect sense. I could see a path to do it. And, but I want to go backwards a little bit. And this is more of, I'll get into the mindset piece, towards the end, like I usually do. But this kind of ties into that, but I want to cover it now because, for me, it was a key part of the path that I took that ultimately led me to this strategy, which built a foundation for me to ultimately go all in full time with this, and then evolve into a lender and everything we have going on now. So let's go back to I think it was April of 2017. And the reason I know it was April, I apologize, it might have been late March, but it was like a Saturday or Sunday afternoon. I'm sitting back in my recliner and I was watching March Madness. It was the tournament was going on and I was just watching games. And I get a text. It was a group text from my now business partner, Bill. Bill and I have been great friends forever, as many of you know. But he texted a group text to me and three of our other buddies that live together at Radford University. So we send a bunch of stuff through a group text, a lot of it inappropriate, immature, all that good stuff. But this one was an actual link. It was a link to a podcast called Choose FI, Choose Financial Independence. The purpose of him sending that had nothing to do with finances, or I'll get into it in a minute, and definitely had nothing to do with real estate. But why it was such a pivotal moment for me was, number one, it's the first time I'd ever seen a podcast or listened to a podcast. Never. Now, I'd heard of podcasts, but I never up to that point listened to one. Never. The only thing I knew about Joe Rogan at that point, who obviously is the biggest podcaster in the world, was he was the host of Fear Factor and a commentator for UFC. That's all I knew about him. But this opened my eyes immediately to the world of podcasting, right? Up to that point, all I had consumed from a media standpoint is watching sports on TV. I'd wake up every morning, ESPN Sports Center would be on. At night, I was watching some kind of ball game. During the day, at my desk while I was work, I was listening to ESPN radio, all sports related, or I was just listening to music. I never, up to that point, consumed anything like productive that got my mind thinking or that led to better things. So this podcast was an episode on credit card hacking. Sounds weird, but it was how to strategically use credit cards to accumulate points for traveling, right? So that was 2017. So now, even to this day, I'm still using this from this podcast. I'm using specific credit cards to pay for all of our expenses, pay them off monthly, and rack up points. And that's what, 8 years ago, we have traveled all over the place using these points. That's a whole nother episode. I actually have a guest that I might bring on to talk about this particular topic in a future episode. But what that did, Bill sending me that text message, started me, like I clicked on the Apple podcast and then it's showing all kinds of recommended podcasts and stuff like that. And I just went down, I started listening to that Choose FI one, which is actually based out of Richmond. I need to connect with those guys, but, and they were just talking about the FIRE movement, FIRE. So financial independence, retire early. So I went deep down the rabbit hole of you know, uh, reducing my expenses and increasing my savings and stuff like that, paying off debts. And I was just got real aggressive with it by listening to this podcast. And I was just implementing right out of the gate all the strategies. So that moment was, again, March or April of 2017 was the moment that I completely, it wasn't gradual, it was immediately. I started, everything I was listening to in my vehicle was podcasts and podcast around, at that time, financial independence, just finance type stuff. Um, and then on TV, I stopped watching TV. I would just listen to podcasts, and I started watching YouTube channels and videos on the same topics at nighttime. So that's what I was consuming. And it's been that way ever since. I cannot tell you the last time I sat down and watched an entire sporting event. And that used to be all I watched, right? So I'm recording this on Friday, October 24th. The World Series starts tonight. I'm kind of interested in it just because, I like sports and I like, you know, watching greatness. But I doubt, where I used to watch every pitch of every game of the baseball playoffs, and same with basketball and football, I might watch an inning or two a game throughout this World Series. Most of it's just going to be seeing replays at the end. I don't consume any of that anymore. And that happened immediately when I got turned on to podcasts and like YouTube University and all that. And then behind that became audiobooks. So what does this have to do with the BRRRR strategy? Uh, I, when listening to these finance podcasts, I saw one common theme that just kept coming up. And the ones that really had true freedom, like financial freedom, the ones that, the interviews I heard and stuff, all had a component of real estate in their portfolio, in their investing portfolio. Some had other businesses and stuff like that, but all of them owned real estate or invested in real estate. So I started seeing this theme. I was like, what the heck am I doing? Like, I know real estate. I've been doing it for years. I know how I've bought several properties. I just never did it with a strategy. So now I'm going to do it with a strategy. And it was like a light bulb moment for me. And so I went down, I'm down that rabbit hole of financial independence. And at that point, I remember I had laid it all out, my finances. I was 2017, 8 years ago, I was 35, I think. Yeah, 35, 36 at that point. So Emma would have been 5 and JJ like 1 or 2 years old. But I remember at that point laying out all of my finances, what I could project my future income to be, or, if it stayed exactly what it is there. And I remember mapping it out that I was going to be able to retire by the age of, I think, 52. So basically, I had like a 15-year window. I was saying if I do all the right things with saving and reducing expenses and all that, I would retire by 52. Retire means leave my job and be able to have enough money to live off of for the rest of life through investments and stuff like that. So that, I became obsessed with it, obsessed. And then it became, and I remember a very specific conversation with one of my friends when we were in the Outer Banks. Probably the summer. Yeah, it would have been that summer. So 3 or 4 months after just this obsession and me kind of mapping everything out, I said, man, I think I can do it before I'm 50. I really think I can do it before I'm 50. And this is how I'm going to do it. I had a strategy. Real estate had not come into play yet. I was hearing about real estate, but at this point, it was just, I'm going to do it through aggressively saving, strategically investing, and reducing expenses, and living off low debt and stuff like that. So I had a plan in place, and it was go time. Again, kept hearing the real estate stuff. So I started the first podcast I got exposed to in real estate. And I think I heard an interview on somebody else's podcast with Brandon Turner. Brandon Turner, I mentioned him earlier. If you're in real estate, you know his name. He's gone on to do all kinds of crazy stuff. But at the time, he was the host of the BiggerPockets podcast. So I started listening to that podcast. And I think the very first episode I listened to, they were talking about the BRRRR strategy. They had a guest on there that was doing this. I was like, man, that makes sense. Makes perfect sense. I understand it. I've got cash. I can go buy a house. I can renovate it with that cash. I've got the money to do it. I can then get a loan on it and pay myself back and then go do it again and then do it again. And then if every house cash flows, I remember doing the math in my head. If every house can cash flow $300 a month and I can buy, I think at the time I was thinking like if I can go out and buy 100 houses and do this, I can do that pretty quickly, recycling my own money, doing it over and over and over. That is, 30 grand a month. 30 grand a month. I could retire off that. I'm good to go. So my plan quickly became I'm going to build 100 rental houses through the BRRRR strategy. That's going to be my portfolio, and I was going to retire. And now I had a new path, a way to do it a little bit faster. So I dove right in. I'll start buying houses. Then Bill and I, shortly thereafter, probably a year or two later, joined forces, and we started doing this BRRRR strategy with the idea that we're going to build enough equity and cash flow through this strategy to let us both retire early, essentially. So we did that, and we started doing it aggressively. Now, the timing was perfect for us. And the reason I say that is because we could refinance. We were putting loans on these properties at 3.5%, 4% all day long. And so it's easy to make a house cash flow at that interest rate, right? So if I've got somebody paying me $1,500 a month rent and I put a 30-year mortgage on it and my mortgage is $800 and then all of my expenses and everything, now we're at like $1,200 with taxes, insurance, maintenance, all that stuff, I'm netting $300 a month. Easy. And we were doing this over and over and over. And so we came in at a good time. And what that allowed us to do is every house we built, once we get that renter in there and we refinance it, a classic example or like a general typical example would be we might have a $150,000 loan on a house. That's our debt. We're cash flowing $200 to $300 a month on it. And that house might be worth $225,000. We owe $150,000. We have $75,000 in equity, and we have no money in it. We haven't left any cash in it. So that is infinite returns, infinite equity on our money because our money is no longer in it once you refinance out of it. So we did this over and over and over. And on paper, our net worth was just going boom, boom, climbing. Our cash flow was, and I'll get into cash flow in a minute because it's not as simple as I'm laying it out right now. Every house doing $300 a month in cash flow. So we started building this, and long story short, I'll get back into the details of the BRRRR strategy in a minute, but I just kind of wanted to explain how it became our foundation to get us to where we ultimately ended up. We did this, dozens of houses over and over and over, eventually used the same strategy for an apartment building, bought several duplexes, all kinds of stuff like that. And it got us to a point where in 2022, way quicker than my initial plan. Remember, I was planning on retiring and not having to work my job anymore at 52 was my goal, 51, 52. And then I was like, I can do it before I'm 50. Well, it turned out I left in my job in December of 2022, which was like 2 months after my 40th birthday. And then Bill was right behind me in March of 23 when he left his job. So we accomplished that goal using the BRRRR strategy, and the BRRRR strategy ended up getting us into other things that, spit off income and allowed us to continue living and funding our lifestyle. So the BRRRR strategy, it's kind of, it seems simple, right, on the surface. It's not as easy as I kind of laid it out in the beginning. And the reason is because anybody that has ever owned rental property, whether it's one rental or 100 rentals, that the cash flow does not work month to month as you kind of expect it to in your head. And what I mean by that is, let's say a house is netting me $300 a month, right? So each month, after everything is paid, I'm making $300 a month. So now that house is making me 36 grand a year, right? Okay. So let's say, and this happens with any of the houses, we get a call from the property manager saying, hey, there's the tenant called and said they're noticing the floor is kind of soft in the bathroom. Okay, send somebody over, check it out. They check it out. We've got a leak under under the toilet or in the bathtub or wherever it is. What's it going to cost? They can get in there. They got to pull everything out. It's some mold and stuff. So now you got to put the tenants up in a hotel room for a couple weeks while they fix it. All in, you're about 20 grand. All right. Well, I've made 36 grand net off this house for the year. Now 20 grand of that is going into fixing this problem. Maybe 25 or 30 grand, depending on how severe it is. All right. So that wipes out a lot of that cash flow. Let's go to the next house. Same thing. Let's say I've made 30 grand on this house. All right. Get a call that the property manager is saying that the tenant says we just had a real cold night last night and the heat wasn't working. Okay. They got to go over there. HVAC guy goes over there, says, man, the whole unit is shot. The warranty's done. There's nothing you do. You need a whole new unit, a whole new HVAC package. It's going to be 10 grand. Okay. Well, there's 10 grand. Oh, and while we're out there, we got to update your electrical to accommodate the new system. That'll be another 5. So now you're 15 grand. So everything looked good. You made 30 on that house, but 15 of it just went into new HVAC. And oh, by the way, there's a leak in the roof. So we got to repair that too. So there goes another 10 grand to fix or put a new roof on the house. So I'm giving like real examples that have happened. They happen all the time with rental properties. And my point is, you do not make your money, at least in the short term, off of cash flow from rental houses. And we learned this very quickly. I don't know how many rental properties we own now. I'm guessing 60 or so units because we have some multifamily and stuff like that. Our cash flow is still to this day not that great, right? We're not living a lavish life off cash flow from 60 units. Now, one day down the road, once they're all paid off or paid down, then yeah, and the rents go up. It might be great, but right now that's not what we're making our money on. We're making our money for long term because every mortgage payment we pay on these rental houses is paying the principal of the debt down a little bit. So we're creating more and more equity. Every year, the market increases. Sometimes it goes backwards, but for the most part, year over year, the market increases. So the values are going up. So the principal is being paid down. The values are going up, and we're creating more of a spread in equity. So year after year, our net worth gets higher and higher simply from those two things happening. The values going up, the principal being paid down. The principal's being paid down by the renters, the rent that's coming in. So it's not money out of our pocket to pay that principal down. So these things just kind of operate themselves, building long-term wealth. We also get tax depreciation. So now that we're full-time real estate professionals, all the depreciation from all those houses, that the tax code allows, we get to write off and offset our active income that we bring in from other things, whether that's cash flow or the lending fund or whatnot. So these are all benefits. But early on, we had this idea that it was going to be as simple as we build a real big portfolio. And we quickly saw this wasn't going to be the case, but we built a real big portfolio and we're going to live off the cash flow from it. It doesn't happen that way. It does not happen that way. So what we had to start doing, especially as like our deal flow ramped up, we started, instead of holding every property, we would hold 4 of them and flip one, right? So we might take one and didn't make the best sense as a rental. So we might flip it and make some, instead of making our money through appreciation and all that, we were getting some real money 30, 40 grand by buying a house, fixing it up, selling it, and making a quick pluck off that. So that's a way that we kind of made a little bit faster money with these transactions. And then we evolved to what we do now is lend money. So that's our fast money. Every loan we make, we're making a profit. Our investors are getting paid, and that is our active income. We still flip a few houses to make a little bit of extra money there. And then our portfolio, we've kind of paused building that for now. We're going to ramp that back up in the years to come. But that will continue building that long-term wealth. Okay, so the BRRRR strategy, there's a couple key things that have to be nailed when you're doing this strategy. And I encourage everybody to go through and listen to the series, like the prior 4 or 5 episodes where I go through how to buy a property, how to underwrite it, and stuff like that. So I'm not going to go into much detail on that at this point, but I do want to get into the detail of the numbers, right? Knowing your numbers and how the numbers flow. Okay, so and again, I encourage everybody to go back and listen to previous episodes because I'll break this down in those episodes even more. But you've got to know what your rehab cost is going to be. You've got to know what your terms are going to be on the back end when you refinance this property. You have to know these things. You have to know what the ARV, the after repair value, is going to be. If you can't get those numbers right or pretty damn close, then this whole thing can blow up. It will not work. And you got to be conservative with your estimates. So, for example, ARV, that's a real important one. If you're going to flip it, that's one thing. You kind of need to know what it's going to sell for on the back end. But if you're going to hold it and refinance out of it, if you get this number wrong, you could end up leaving a lot of money in that deal. So I'll give you an example. Let's say the ARV of a house, once I'm all done and fixed it up, is $300,000. Okay. Well, I know that my DSCR lender or my bank lender let's say they're going to lend 80% of that value, right? So if it appraises at 300,000, I know my lender, excuse me, at 80% can do a $240,000 loan, right? So that means just simple math, what I buy it for, what my holding cost, all the money I have into this, if I want to get all that money out, I have to keep that money below 240,000. If I end up having 260,000 into it, and they're only going to give me 240 when I refinance because I know that ARV is 300,000, and then I leave 20,000 into that deal. And what I mean by that is, if let's say I'm using my own cash, I've spent 260,000 of my own cash on this house to fix it up and do everything I need to do. Now the bank is going to give me 240 through a cash out refinance. Well, that's not replenishing my entire capital amount. I've got 260 spent, so I'm leaving 20,000 in there. Not the end of the world, but it's definitely still a good, if you're making 300 a month or, whatever your cash flow is, it's a decent return on investment, but it's not if you leave money into it, that much money or even more, then you've kind of washed out the beauty of this strategy. Because the beauty is you're able to use the same source of money to recycle over and over and over. If you leave money in, it doesn't take many deals to leave money in each deal till you're out of capital. Now you got to go find other sources of capital. Again, not the end of the world, but the main consideration there is knowing roughly what that ARV is going to be. And when I say roughly, it's got to be pretty tight. So how do you do that? You can run your own comps, roughly using Zillow and stuff like that. Obviously, if you're a realtor, you can definitely run comps. What we did is every property, wherever it was located, we had a couple realtors spread out everywhere. We'd go to them, say, hey, run comps on this property, this square footage, fully fixed up. And what I'm trying to get an idea of, because the bank is going to use an appraisal, what's this going to appraise for to let me know how much money I'm going to be able to borrow. So if I'm just going off of an assumption that it's going to appraise or come in at 300,000 in value, And I'm just using that based off some, Zestimates I've seen on Zillow and stuff like that. I didn't get a professional to help me determine that value. Well, what if it comes in at $250,000, the appraisal? All right. Well, now let's say I need to get 240 out of it. I ain't getting 240. If it comes in at 250, they're lending 80% of that. So 80% of 250, a lot of y'all can do math in your head. I usually can, but not right now. So that's 200,000. All right. So if I've spent 240 on this property, or even 260, like my first example, I'm only able to pull 250 or 200,000 out at refinance because they're only going to give me 80% of what it appraised at. So I've horribly miscalculated the ARV. And now I've got a lot of money, not just a lot of money, I got to bring money to close on that refinance. That's a terrible scenario and blows the whole thing up. So my advice there is two things. Work with a realtor, a professional that can get you really good comps and a good assessment of value so you can have a really close idea of what this thing's going to appraise at. But number two, work your numbers, like build in a contingency. If that realtor comes back and says, hey, that should appraise at 300,000, assume it's going to come in at 280 and then work your numbers back from that. Same thing with every other number you're working in part of this process, right? So your construction contractor says they can do it for 60. Assume that some things are going to come up and 60 is going to turn into 80. Okay. And work backwards through all these numbers to your main number, which is how much you buy the property for, right? So work backwards, be conservative with everything, and then arrive at how much you want to offer on this property. And that's how you perfect the BRRRR strategy. You've been conservative, conservative, conservative. Now you've made an offer. If they don't accept it, move on to the next one. If they do, now you know you've got enough contingencies built in and enough conservative mindset built into all the numbers you've applied that if it goes better, great, you've hit a home run. And if it doesn't go as good as you hope, you've been conservative enough in your estimates that you're still okay, right? So that's the most important piece of the BRRRR strategy. Bill and I didn't get this right on every one. We left money in deals. Fortunately, over time, rents went up, the values went up. We were able to pull money out and get our money back out. But this is very important if you're going to use it to scale a portfolio. Now, in my opinion, a lot of people say the BRRRR strategy doesn't work anymore, blah, blah, blah. BS. We lend money now to a lot of people doing the BRRRR strategy, and it works just fine, right? The key is it's just a math problem, right? We used to work numbers off of 3.5%, 4% refinance rates. Now we got to work them off 7.5%, 8%, depending on, what kind of terms you're getting. So I know that now, let's say I'm looking at a project now, a deal comes to me and I want to do the BRRRR strategy on it. I want to hold it. I want to refinance it. I'm going to figure out the ARV. I'm going to be conservative with that. So let's say it comes in at 300,000. I'm going to assume 280. Then I'm going to know I've got a relationship with the DSCR lender or a bank, and I'm going to know kind of what my general terms are going to be. So I'm going to figure that out at 8%. And then I'm going to assume that rates are going to go up. So I'm going to do my math at 8.5%. Then I'm going to work with my contractor, figure out what the rehab's going to be. So I'm working, if you pay attention, I'm working the BRRRR strategy backwards. It's like RERB. That's a silly joke. I'm sorry for anybody that heard that. But I'm working from the refinance piece. So I'm figuring out my ARV and all that stuff and being conservative. I'm figuring out my interest rate, being conservative, adding a little bit more to it. I'm getting back to my rent piece. I'm being conservative on that. I can see that I can probably rent it for $1,500 a month or $1,800 a month. I'm going to assume $200 less. Then I'm going to get into my rehab. I can rehab it for $50,000. I'm going to assume it's going to cost $70,000. And then all of those assumptions being conservative get me back to the buy part, which is my max allowable offer. And at that point, I know the max I can pay for this house to be safe and then implement this BRRRR strategy. So in my opinion, if you perfect this strategy, and it can still be done at the higher interest rates, it's just a math problem. You got to be better at finding good deals, sourcing good deals, and negotiating good prices. If you can do that, in my opinion, there's no better strategy in real estate for beginners, right? Or for, I mean, we're still doing it, right? We will still do this strategy forever. We might do it at a little bit bigger scale on some apartments and stuff like that, but there's no better strategy or easier strategy to scale and build wealth responsibly, right? There's all kinds of niches within real estate that, like, we're in the lending business there, that can definitely build wealth. But we had to build to that. We had to grow to that. First, by making enough money to lend ourselves, and then building up a reputation where investors trust us to manage their money and do the same thing. So, for those that are like thinking about getting into it and you want to have some rentals and you want to build a portfolio, this is it. This is it. You got to go back, educate yourself on how to source deals, educate yourself on how to underwrite deals, educate yourself on, and start with things like I did, podcasts and stuff like that. And I've got a few episodes out there. Go listen to them. Educate yourself on managing contractors and stuff like that. And then go start. Just start. And let's say you've got access to, let's call it $200,000. You can do this strategy one deal at a time. Finish it, then go do another one, and then start as you build up your bankability. You're building up your net worth and your balance sheet and stuff like that. You're going to start finding access to more capital, whether it be through private lenders, hard money lenders, banks, whatever. So that's how you build it. And folks, it's hard and intimidating if you don't educate yourself and just jump in and do it, right? I always encourage everybody to link up with a mentor, somebody that can hold your hand, that you can provide value to, whether it's in the form of paying them or helping them in their business some way. But link up with somebody that can hold your hand and help you along the way. So the BRRRR strategy, again, there's so many resources and books and all kinds of incredible things out there to learn more about it. I have rambled my way through it, but I think I've given a decent sense of what it is. It is the sole thing that got Bill and I to the point we are now. And we're still growing in other areas as well. But it's the easiest. Like if my daughter or my son finishing high school and they want to get into what I'm doing, that's where I'm going to steer them. We're going to build a portfolio, and you're going to do it this way, and you're going to do it through the BRRRR strategy, and they're going to become experts on it. And where I really want them to become experts on, knowing the numbers, how to underwrite, and knowing how to source good deals. Everything else, they'll figure it out, right? Anybody can figure it out. So with that, I'm going to transition. I'm going to make this a little bit shorter than I usually do because I've gone so long rambling on the BRRRR strategy, but into the mindset nugget. Before I do that, I'm going to turn it over to 608B Capital, our sponsor, for a word. If you've been following this podcast for any time now, you have certainly heard us talk about 608B Capital. 608B Capital is our lending company that Bill Phillips and I launched about a little over 2 years ago. And we fund folks that are buying houses, fixing them up, and then ultimately selling them or refinancing them for longer term use. And we're the short term financing for that. So if you have anyone in your network or you yourself are into that business or interested in learning more, you can reach out to us by checking out our website, 608bcapital.com. We always have plenty of capital to lend, and we're excited to work with as many new people as possible. We also have an excellent referral program, so contact us for more information on that, and we can't wait to hear from you. All right. 608B Capital, a great resource for doing the BRRRR strategy. As I mentioned earlier, we have a lot of borrowers that we lend money to that are doing the BRRRR strategy. And what they're doing is they're using our money, paying us interest, but using our money to buy. They're fixing it up. They are renting it out. And then they're refinancing with a long-term lender that is paying our money back. It's a beautiful strategy. We have a lot of people to do that. So if you have a need or you're trying to get started out, we're a great resource. There's a bunch of other lenders out there that do the same thing. Research them, get to know them, get them on your team, and start utilizing them if you don't have your own capital to use and allocate towards this. So my mindset nugget, I had a different one before I started this, but going back to the mug that my mom brought me today made me think of grit. I think I've talked about grit on this podcast a million times, but it's a great segue to talk about today because this BRRRR strategy, there's a lot of components to it, right? I've gone through them all, and none of them work out perfectly. In fact, most of them don't work out great at all. So when you have grit, for those that are watching, I'm holding up my mug. You can get through those things. And, I'll read it again on this mug. I love it. The drive, stamina, and fortitude. Love that word, fortitude, to push through any challenge or obstacle until success is achieved. I mentioned earlier, Bill and I did not get this right a lot when we started, but we took action. And we had the resourcefulness, we had the grit to get through all the challenges, and every rep we did, we got better. And now we can do these deals in our sleep. Like if everything had to stop and I had to start over, and knowing what I know now, we would go out there and burr the hell out of some houses, and we would continue doing it, and because we know it, and we only know it because we failed a lot in the beginning. And you got to have grit to push through failure, use failure as a tool, which we have and continue to do so. Like we fail every day, and we get up and we say, okay, that was a lesson. What do we learn from it? Move on. In fact, Bill and I talk about this a lot. Just like I call it in the military, I'm not military, but that you hear after action reports. Well, we kind of do something very similar in our business where if a loan doesn't go quite as planned, or maybe we got some numbers wrong in underwriting or something, we don't dwell on it. In fact, there's no negative talk about it at all. It's just, what do we learn? Okay. What can we implement moving forward to make sure that doesn't happen again? And what we do rep after rep of that, the grit to just be resourceful, and the stamina. I love that word because, you got to have stamina to get punched in the head over and over and over through failure to continue through and improve right through that failure. And we do that. And we did it when we were building our portfolio. We continue to do it as we build this lending fund. But as I talk about a lot, you got to have grit. Like grit applies to every area of your life, and either you have it or you don't. And I don't believe that, let me take that back. I don't believe that you're either born with it or you're not. I think anybody at any point in their life can make up their mind that they're going to become more gritty, and they're going to stop being negative, and they're going to stop letting things that happen to them knock them down, right? I think anybody on this planet can develop that mindset. And those that do tend to have better luck, right? And because they make their better luck. And they make better luck by kind of operating through life with blinders. Like you're not distracted by all the negativity and the bad things that are happening. You're just forward focused on what's the next step. You've got the drive to keep going. You've got the stamina to endure it. And you've got the fortitude to push through all the chaos, right? You can develop that. How do you develop it? It doesn't have to be through real estate, entrepreneurship, or anything like that. I know I'm a broken record here, but it can be through physical hard activity, right? Forcing yourself to go through hard things, right? Go run on a treadmill. Go walk 3 miles if you're not used to doing that. Go lift some weights. Go do some sprints. Go do some burpees or some squats or some pull-ups or whatever it is, and do it and build upon it. Know that it sucks. Know that you're going to be better for doing it, and continue pushing through. And what you start building by doing that, go do an ice bath every day, or a sauna, or just something that's hard, that makes you get uncomfortable makes you breathe hard, makes you sweat, makes you cold, whatever it is, and force that upon yourself. Because if you can do that and then repeat it and get rep after rep in, now you're going to start calibrating your mind that you can do hard stuff, right? You can do hard things and you can get through it and you can grit your way through them. So I challenge everybody to, if you don't identify as yourself as a gritty person, that doesn't mean you don't have it in you, right? Start somewhere. If you, let's say you're not an entrepreneur, you're getting up, you're going to a job every day, 9 to 5. That's fine. Right? There's nothing wrong with that. That's admirable. But let's say you do that. Your routine is you wake up every morning, you eat a breakfast, you go to work, you work all day at a desk or doing whatever you do. You come home, you sit there on the couch, you watch TV, you fall asleep, you go to bed and get up and do it again. Then on the weekends, you're going out, you might move a little bit more, but most of it is just lounging around, having a few drinks, whatever. If that's your life, then allocate 20 minutes a day to just go for a walk. Start there. Or get you a Apple Watch or a Fitbit, or your phone tracks steps too if you're holding it in your pocket. See how many steps you're taking every day. If you're taking 5,000 a day, bump it up to 8. Challenge yourself to bump it up to 8, and then bump it up to 10. And then maybe 3 days a week, do some push-ups and some air squats. Start there, right? Just try to do 50 push-ups, not all at once. Do 10 sets of 10, or try to do 100 air squats where you just body weight. Try to add that in. All right. Try to cut out, let's say you drink soda. Try to go from 3 sodas a day to 1, right? That's hard. If that's where you're at now, it's hard to cut that out. Try to pack your lunch rather than going out to eat every day for lunch, right? And pack a healthy lunch. Do that 3 days a week. Try to implement some what seems to be small things into your life, but they're hard to do, right? Because you haven't been doing them. The extra steps, the extra little bit of workout, the extra eating, drinking more water rather than soda. Try to implement these things. And then what you're going to find is, oh, I can do this. All right. Well, what's the next thing I can do? And then what's the next thing I can do? And the next thing. And next thing you know, you're going to start identifying as somebody that can do hard things, right? And once you feel like you're that person, you can freaking do anything you want to do. And I know that sounds cliche, but if you identify yourself and you look in the mirror as a gritty person that can do hard things, and even so much so that you do them willingly, there's nothing that can get in your way. So at that point, you want to start a business. You want to start investing in real estate. You want to start looking for a new career, things that are hard, investing in yourself, investing in others, whatever the case may be. You now have proven to yourself that you know that's going to be hard, but you've proven to yourself that you can take that extra step to do hard things and deal with it because you're doing so willingly. And it's all about recalibrating your mind. So grit, if you don't have it, you don't feel like you have it. I haven't always had it. I've been pretty gritty most of my life, but I still some days wake up not feeling very gritty, right? And I've got to force myself every day to activate the grit, right? And when I do, I always feel better because of it. It's 1 o'clock in the afternoon right now. I've still got to get the gym in today. I don't want to. It's Friday. I want to go. I'm going to pick Emma up and go hunting this afternoon. I've got about 2 hours before I do that. So I need to find a window where I'm going to go push some weights around, do something hard, because I got to do something hard to keep my mind calibrated on the fact that I can do hard things. And that's all I got to say about it. So the BRRRR strategy, in summary: buy, rehab, rent it out, refinance it, repeat. About as simple as it gets. And anybody that has interest in real estate can do this. If you want more info about it, contact me, shoot me a message, whatever you want to do. I'm happy to help you get going or give you some ideas. And obviously, if you're needing capital, 608B Capital is happy to help you with that. So with that, I'll wrap up another episode of Burning the Ship solo episode, and we'll see you guys next time. Have a good one. Thank you for joining us on another episode of Burning the Ships podcast. As always, want to thank our sponsor, 608B Capital. We are a short-term lending fund, a debt fund, open for investors who are looking for a passive return. And also we offer products to our main product to fix and flippers and buy and holders, folks that are doing things like that in real estate. Also want to remind you about our referral program. Check out our website for more information on that, and we're happy to talk to you further if you're interested. Again, thank you for joining us on Burning the Ships. And do me a favor and go out and try to find someone or some way that you can add value into the world today. Think through it, zoom out, and try to find where you can add value. I think it'll help wrap up your day, wrap up your week, whatever you're working on a positive note if you constantly think that way. Where can I add value? So with that, we thank you for joining us on another episode of Burning the Ships. Have a good one.